Welcome everybody. My name is Helen with Cody, and we are doing a road to success, talking about the upgrade path to CloudSuite Industrial version 10. And we will talk a little in depth about the difference between upgrading and migrating. There we go. Just a little disclaimer here. This document may reflect the direction Infor may take with regard to specific products described in this document, all of which is subject to change by Infor at its sole discretion, with or without notice to you or me. This document is not a commitment to you in any way and should not rely on this document or any of its content in making a decision regarding the software. So, why upgrade? Well, let's start with a little quiz. We should upgrade because I have nothing better to do. Or we should upgrade because all the cool kids are doing it. We should upgrade because my social media influencer said to, or because I want to capitalize on technology and functional enhancements. So I think we all know the answer to this, and that is we want to capitalize on the technology and functional enhancements that are available now with CloudSuite Industrial version 10. So let's talk a little bit about those enhancements. From a technological perspective, we have within CSI now what you'll hear me call or see termed as SVI, single version installer. We'll talk about the independent mongoose and CSI releases and how that really makes life a lot easier for us. We'll talk about the user-based explorer and the user experience, and AIO, the all-in-one architecture that is now CSI version 10 is built upon. So, single version installer, frequent releases. Why is that a good thing? Well, before, whenever we went into a new release, we saw that Infor would plan, design, develop, and test, and then come out with a major release. And sometimes that took quite a while. Now it's going to be plan, develop, design, and test with a release. Plan, design, develop, test with a release, and so on and so forth. So what's that mean to you? This replaces what you now know as a configuration manager, at least for users in the cloud. It is used both in the cloud and on-premise. One of the key things is it combines installation and patch processes. Infor now has a build automation tool, and that it can be used to create a release literally overnight. Now, if you're coming from a prior version of Sightline or even Cymex, a pre-sequel version to CloudSuite 10, you'll be doing what's called a migration. And if you're coming from an SQL version, you'll be doing what's called an upgrade. And to accomplish that, there are some database validation and prep tools that verify the schema, customizations, replication rules, etc. And that will help you get in line and get ready for the upgrade/migration. Something that's new is this all-in-one AIO database concept. It's got everything in it. We might be used to having a database, a data database and a forms database, and maybe some other tools in a database. But with version 10, everything is in the existing single database, all in one. So there's no longer the need for the configuration wizard. The manager is still available for on-premise customers. The key takeaway here is that the single version installer handles handles patches with releases. So there's no more patch installation, no more going out and getting a patch or an APAR and downloading it, having to apply it and read through the release notes and see what it impacts. You will have a release notes that talks about the functional business enhancement or fix or whatever, and you can decide to take advantage of it or not take advantage of it. But it is a release that's going to handle those patches. As I mentioned, users migrating from Sightline versions 5 and 6, the progress-based database, they'll use a traditional migration tool to migrate up to CloudSuite 10. This is known as database level 0 or DL0. The process results in a partitioned all-in-one empty database at DL0 in CloudSuite version 10. The validation and prep tool verifies that the database is ready for the single version installer, and then the single version installer applies all the available releases and fixes to upgrade it to the latest version of CloudSuite 10. If the users are already on a SQL database, Sightline 7 or higher, there's a traditional upgrade tool that essentially does the same thing. The AIO all-in-one database includes everything. The application is there, the forms are there, the objects are there, the templates there, any approved third-party products are there, foreign language, country packs, etc. So how does this differ now than what you know now? Well, one thing is users can do things in CloudSuite 10 with the single version installer that typically an IT department or a consultant would have to do. And that is, as a user, you can set your domestic currency. It's set on the multi-currency parameters. It's not set as the sites are being created. You can add sites and entities. Again, you don't have to do that up front and lay out that infrastructure as the sites are being architected and created. You can copy sites. You can clone a demo or training environment. And with CloudSuite 10, your technology stack is seamless. As you can see in this graphic, it's got all the different pieces of the tech stack: ION, Mingle, IFS, PCM, SNOP, demand and scheduling. You can read it. IDM, Info Document Management, ION Enterprise. It's all seamless now. So benefits, simplicity. That's the number one thing they were going for. Supporting one version reduces cost and complexity to the vendor and reduces development efforts because the same efforts can go farther with the same investment, both for the vendor and for anyone who is doing customizations. No patching. Fixes are all delivered within each release. And the intent is a 0 day one impact. So all the customer modified forms remain active. And some enhancements, though, there could be a deadline for users to accept the new functionality. But by and large, you pick and choose what functionality you wish to accept. Single version provides a steady stream of new enhancements. You get to choose when to install, a little bit more control over that if you're on-prem than if you're in the cloud. Upgrades are meant to be a non-event. Customers can see the results of their suggestions sooner. Everybody has an idea about how something could work better, more efficient, different, and maybe you've submitted a customer enhancement request. And if they've acted on that, we don't have to wait anymore for a major release to come out. If Infor has acted on that, they can roll that out with a dot release. And then, as I mentioned, a zero impact for day one event, meant to be non-disruptive and doesn't ruin your day. Smaller upgrades mean less risk, and all the releases are available for download. Okay, another piece of the technology that is improved with enhanced with CSI version 10. We now have user-based Explorer and independent Mongoose releases. Well, what does that mean? Well, previously to 10, you could sometimes get in a catch-22. Maybe you saw an enhancement or you saw something feature that you wanted or needed in CSI, but you couldn't go there yet because it was tied to a Mongoose release. And that Mongoose release maybe was tied to some customization you'd done. Well, now that connection is severed. I can update Mongoose separately from updating CloudSuite and vice versa. So now with Mongoose, there's extensibility built in, and so we can do that. Master Explorer. This is something that I do a lot of demos, and this is something I see a lot, and I'm asked a lot when I'm doing a demo, or I'm asked a lot when I'm doing an initial workshop for a brand new customer that's implementing CSI, and that is, hey, I know in the past other software I've had or software I currently have, if I take something out of a user's folder, if I hide it from them, when they go in and look at the Explorer, it doesn't show up. Well, in the past, CSI didn't do that, but now it does. I can use the groups functionality on the user, and I only the users that I assign to a specific group only see the forms that are associated with that specific group. That's pretty cool. And here's how they do it. They go into the users form, they set up the group just like you do now, but by virtue of setting up that user group, in this example, this person is in the purchasing group and the projects group. And when they go into the Explorer, they're going to see all of the purchasing forms and all of the projects forms. Now they will see the header, if you will, the folder for other areas, but they won't see the forms relevant to other areas. And the reason, there is a reason for that. The reason that you would see other forms, other module form folders, is because you could have certain forms that are within your group authorization, but they could also be displayed or contained within other modules as well. So for instance, the item content references query and the supplementary units conversion, both are queries that you would see possibly under other modules, but they also part and parcel of the project and the purchasing module. And when you're doing the install, the pruning, as we call it, happens automatically unless it's turned off. That's a switch you'd have to manually turn off. What that means is, you know, you're doing an upgrade. Let's say you're doing an upgrade from 8 or 9 to 10, and you do the install, and you have a set of people in a group. Well, they now, by definition of belonging to that group, will only see the forms that they are privy to by virtue of their membership within that group. Okay, so that's the technical enhancements. Let's talk about the functional enhancements and why you might want to go to CSI version 10. Okay. Several different areas of functional enhancements. We'll talk about each of them, but there's an inventory section, some significant inventory enhancements. There are some CPQ enhancements. There are some advanced planning and scheduling enhancements. The finance module has a lot of goodies in it that people have been looking for quite a long time. There's some pick, pack, and ship enhancements and a couple of other miscellaneous enhancements, which we'll get into. So jumping right into the inventory enhancements. The item revision number is now visible on lots, or maybe I shouldn't call it the item revision number. The item revision is now visible on lots. This is new. It wasn't there before. Manufacture date plus shelf life now equals expiration date for lots and serial numbers. This is something users have been asking for quite a while. And then we have introduced this concept of inventory transaction restriction codes. So we're going to get into each of these. The item revision on lot numbers. As you can see on the form that I have on the screen that I have up, this is a lot form. This lot is for the good old FA 10,000. And you can see it's for lot number FA 180-129-00001. But if you look at the upper right-hand corner, we can see that I can see the rev number for that. Before, without having a revision on a lot number, revs and lots really had very little meaning if you had something that was lot controlled and revision controlled. Purchase materials, the rev number from a PO line is used when I'm receiving a purchase order and I'm receiving a purchased item that is lot tracked. So I'll be generating that revision number based on whatever rev numbers on the PO line. If I'm receiving off of a job, that job header is going to have a revision number on it, and that revision number will be used whenever I'm receiving product from a job that is lot tracked. Also, if I'm doing physical inventory, then I might have existing inventory. If I've done an upgrade or a conversion, I might have existing inventory that did not have the revision numbers on my lot, right? Because we didn't have the capability before. So at the physical inventory, when I'm doing tags and sheets, the item revision number can be manually added to those new records. So the expiration date calculation for lots and serials. Now you can see that we've got the manufacture date along with the creation date. That is what's used to generate my my expiration date. My manufacture date plus my shelf life will create my expiration date. And then I can issue by lot, location, or expiration date. Used to be only issued by lot or location. And within the parameters, I control the shipment of an older lot of an expiration date, so I can have it flag me if I don't want to ship something from an older lot or an expired lot. And there are some other new lot and serial parameters as well. Inventory transaction restriction codes. This is something that's pretty powerful and it's been a long time coming. You can see here an example of a serial number form on the left and a lot number form on the right. And there's a new field there called transaction restriction code. What in the heck is that? Well, there are 12 transaction restriction code areas. They are meant to prevent transactions by category, by one of those categories, on a lot tracked item or a serial tracked item or a container if the container contains a restricted item. So if any lot or serial number in that container is restricted, then the entire container is restricted. And when I'm moving in from inventory into a container with a restricted lot or a serial number in it, we are warned, and then the system will prompt us, do we want to continue with the move into the restricted container? So here are the restricted 12 as they're known. Adjustments, cycle count for posting, job finishing, receiving anything off a job, issuing to a job or changing the whip of a job, which would include what? Releasing a job. Miscellaneous issues and miscellaneous receipts, a PO receipt. Also, that's not limited to POs, that's also an RMA receipt or a transfer order receipt, a shipment, which could be a customer order or a transfer order. On the job, if I'm doing a split or merge or creation of whip. If I'm doing a stock move from location A to location B, any transfer or any transfer loss. Those are the transactions that I can set up with restriction codes on. And so where are they enforced? A better question might be where they're not enforced. I'm not going to read this whole list to you, but you can see that they're very, very well enforced all throughout the system. Essentially, almost every inventory related transaction will enforce the restriction codes. And here's how they're set up. I go in and I say that from, for instance, this is setting restrictions to serial utility, and I go specify and call out a range of serial numbers, and then I pull up that restriction type and I choose what category it is, whether it's a transfer order, transfer loss, stock move, what have you, and I set that up and then I process it. As I said, a better question as far as where they're used and where they're not used might be where they're not used. That's a simpler question to answer. Labor and next operation, other cost, physical inventory, scrap and withdrawal and returns are not someplace where you would see a transaction restricted. Those are unrestricted transactions. Other areas where they would be out of scope, planning, calculations for quantity on hand and non-nettable, anything within the QCS module. Excuse me, I've already noted withdrawals and returns, Factory track doesn't use it. Physical inventory doesn't use it. Data collection and error processing doesn't use it. And neither is it used in point of sale. So that's the inventory transaction restrictions. All right, so let's talk about CPQ, configure, price, quote, enhancements. So if we're doing a CPQ sales portal and we get an inbound business object document, it's going to bring in the lines configuration, and it's going to create the job structure for estimate jobs, estimate lines, excuse me, and order lines. What we have now is the ability to create intelligent part number for each configuration if we desire that. It's always created the intelligent part number for sub-levels that were configured, but now we're creating an intelligent part number if we want for a top level customer order line level item. It will also create additional lines on the orders for accessories, warranty, etc. Just like native CSI will, CPQ will now do that as well. This is just an example of setting up for item auto creation. We're just saying auto generation or auto creation of the item number. They're in the middle. They're in the middle of the screen. If that auto item creation for external orders is checkboxed, then we get an IPN, intelligent part number. And we can also choose to automatically create the job and subjobs with the BOD data that's coming in from CPQ or EQ. And we can click, or we can click on the source button on the order line to manually do that like we've always done. All right, some things that have been added to, some enhancements that have been added to APS. Component shortages have historically been a little bit of an issue, especially in a make to order environment. Enforcing the get ATP and get CTP processes, depending whether I'm using APS Infinite or APS Full, has been an issue. And then some miscellaneous APS enhancements. So it used to be, for component shortages, APS didn't fully look through the component requirements that were supplied by other orders, and that might create a trigger for a false ready displaying in some of the planning forms. But now the system completely evaluates the inventory all the way through the routing and BOM and the indented routing and BOM, looks at existing supply through all levels and not just one level down, and it searches for shortages where before it stopped at the very first shortage it found. So now it's much more comprehensive in V10, and it gives you a much more accurate picture of your available to promise or capable to promise. The shortages button has also been added to the planning detail form, the demand summary APS form, and the material planner workbench form. So you can see now in the component shortages form, in the example I have up on the screen, the low-level code is for the FA 20,000 that's satisfying a demand for a customer order, DC 307 line 2 release 10. But if I look at the shortages, I can see that I have a chain shortage, which is low level 2, a sprocket shortage, which is low level 2, a frame shortage, low level 1, and so on and so forth. So I see that fully indented shortage view now for my components. All right, so on the planning parameters, we have essentially the same thing that we've always had, but we now have the little check mark that will force calculation for ATP and CTP for all CO lines. We've got it right here. And we've also got a check mark that says plan configured orders using configured jobs, all right? That gives us a much more accurate and specific picture of our planning. So that forces the calculator the ATP and CTP for all CO lines. And that means APS planning is active on the shipping site. So when Infinite APS, we will automatically get an ATP, whether we hit the get ATP button or not. And when we're fully APS, we'll automatically get a CTP, a capable to promise, whether we hit that button or not. The availability results will come back and suggest the projected date, whatever that date is, as the new due date, as long as it's later than the due date that's on the line. And the user can choose to accept, reject, or cancel the projected date, depending on what authorization privileges they have. They may not have the authorization to reject it or cancel it. Once you have that flag turned on in the planning parameters, the user could get this informational message. Calculate get ATP CTP is enabled on planning parameters. You can only save one at a time. This might come into play when you're doing something like a copy rows, or paste rows append of a bunch of lines into a customer order, or a bunch of jobs, maybe even a bunch of estimates. So just be aware of that. Other miscellaneous APS enhancements. There are some things to support APS in the cloud. For instance, if you need to refresh your planning engine, you can do that from a form now. That normally you would have to get into SQL and do some things if you needed to really get into the data and look at it. Well, you can do that from a form now within the cloud, because those users really don't have access to SQL. APS is now encrypting APS passwords, and the APS freezing with offset is working as you might expect it should be working before. Let's talk about those. And then the new parameter, max what if databases, has been added to a specific APS options tab. And this will allow us to override the entry on the previous field that came from the parameters. There is a new APS planning and scheduling messages form, which is a little more meaningful. And there's a message life field. So anybody who's been using Sightline or CSI for a while and doing planning, they know that they get these planning messages, and they stay out there for a very long time. Well, now we can decide what the lifespan of that planning message is. And then on the background task history, there's a report. We can get a count of errors and blocked orders, and it refers the user to the new APS messages form. So when you're trying to troubleshoot your planning and trying to figure out why something might be getting planned the way it's getting planned or not planned at all, it's easy to see that you've got some blockages, you've got errors, and it's going to take you to the new APS form. The enhanced security encrypts the SQL password. So it's encrypted when it's stored, and it's decrypted as it's needed. A little side note here, if you're doing your own install, all existing APS services need to be stopped and removed prior to installing this update. And then the APS freezing with offset. So there was a simplified freezing operation in offset hours on the resource Gantt chart and the resource sequencing form. And if there was an offset defined for that operation following a frozen one, it would start later than it intended to. And that was less than optimum from a planning and scheduling perspective. So, it wouldn't start until the frozen operation was complete, and that could lead to delayed schedules, artificially delayed schedules. So now that offset works like you would expect. It takes the time that the frozen operation starts, it adds the offset time for the next operation, and that is when the offset operation will begin. It doesn't have to wait until the prior operation is complete. Okay, so jumping into some financial enhancements, and I'll give you my disclaimer here. I'm not an accountant, but I can talk to some of these, and some of these are pretty cool. I've been hearing the user community ask for these for quite a while. We're going to talk about dunning letters and a status now that's on the accounting period, some multi-FSB accounting periods, some things that are related to VAT entries that Infor has taken from different country packs and added it to core. We've put transfer orders on the EU sales list report, and so on and so forth. I'm going to go ahead and jump into them. So dunning letters, now there are groups and schedules that I can run my dunning letters in. There's a field on the AR parameters for customer types and customer forms relative to the dunning group that they're going to be run in. I can assess dunning fees now. Now I can print and send dunning letters with a background task. That was not available before. I had to do it manually. Dunning alerts will pop up telling me that I've got a potential issue on the horizon. And the dunning report, I can customize up to 20 different text fields now. And I see the customer name, address, billing contact, AR balance, and past due item displayed on the dunning report. Here's the form for the dunning schedules, and I can set those fields and make them whatever I want them to be. For example, the one that's highlighted, field 3, the field value is deer. So these are kind of boilerplate type stuff that will pop up onto our dunning letters for us. An example of a dunning letter, how we can now customize it, make it look. As you may or may not know, in 9.10 or prior, changes to dunning letters had to be done in Visual Studio. It took some development work. What's important is to verify that your customer document profiles are accurate, and that you then would set up a background task to run the AR finance charge generation, run that finance charge posting if you're collecting dunning fees, set up a background task to print the dunning labels, or I'm sorry, dunning letters, and then the AR dunning alert notifies key people via eventing that dunning letters were sent. This one's a big one, accounting period status. We now have a status on our period, not just our fiscal year, and that status is either open, closed, or adjusting. So if it's closed, there's no transactions allowed in that accounting period. If it's open, it remains functioning exactly like it did prior to version 10. If it's set to an adjusting status, then that means the allowable days from the general parameters form are overridden, and business transactions are allowed only by users that have enter out of date range group on their user profile, even in the current period. So that's a little bit of a change. And the allowable days general parameters form are also overridden, and we allow only journal posting by those users that have posting out of current period group on their user profile, again, even in the current period. Allows you to be a little bit more restrictive. And as you can see here, here's a shot of the accounting periods, and to the right of the end date, you can see the different states of the accounting periods: open, closed, and adjusting. Offsetting VAT entries. A couple caveats here. The tax system one must be an item-based tax system. Each tax code can be linked to VAT reporting category. 2 of the 11 VAT reporting categories are now reversing. They can be fired off when I generate AP transactions, use Voucher Builder and AP vouchers and adjustments. For those 2 VAT categories, VAT is recorded and reversed. The VAT tax codes can be linked to tax line numbers. And then the VAT tax report shows both the VAT and the reversing entry. An example of what the EU VAT reporting categories looks like, and the little check mark there shows the offsetting tax entry. We've got 2 of the 11 set, the reverse charge and the EU purchase. And the data view showing the VAT report. So if you're using VAT, I think this is going to be a welcome change for you. If you are a EU customer and you traditionally have struggled with showing your transfer orders on your sales report, that has now been resolved. So transfer orders are now on EU sales list reports in version 10. We've taken the Japan country pack and moved the monthly invoices functionality from the Japan country pack to the core product. So there's now an invoice batch cutoff day. It's a day of the month. Generate the invoice batch, then it batches, and then the detail, and we delete any unwanted transactions, and we print the invoice batch report, and then we can verify the AR posted transaction detail. Something that we've been looking for, that I've heard users looking for quite a while. On the customer's form, we specify what the batch cutoff day is. And that results in a customized invoice. And the AR batch number gets assigned to it. See our batch number 7, lower left. Now GL, this is a lot different. This is a little more controlling than it was in the past. It used to be you could pull up the general journal or any writable journal and make an entry directly into it. You can't do that now. You have to use GL vouchers to make a transactional impact to the GL journal. You can set it up so that approval is required before posting. So basically this functionality was taken from the China country pack because this is a China GAAP requirement and it was applied to the core product. The GL voucher transaction number will appear on the GL posted transactions, and that's the only way to make a general ledger entry, reclass, or whatever you want to call it. This is an example of the GL voucher, what it looks like. This is an example of the GL vouchers approval, where I go to approve GL vouchers. This one, I said approval required. Now, that's optional. You don't have to make approval required, but you have that capability and that control should you want it. A little change to the AR draft remittance form. And this is another big one in the finance area, auto posting. Previously haven't been able to, without some form of personalization or customization, auto post vouchers, invoices, multi-site invoicing, AR payments, generate AP transactions. Now we can auto post those. See, we have the ability to put it on the background. And that's what I had for the functional enhancements. So at this point, I'd like to turn this over to Mick Pennington, and he's going to talk a little bit about Burst.
All right, thank you, Helmuth. Just in respect for everybody's time here, since we're running long, go ahead and advance to the capabilities slide. So we'll skip the first couple, some of the background slides, and just get to the capabilities. So starting with version 10, Burst, which is Infor's best of breed analytics package, is going to be integrated with CloudSuite Industrial, including content, where the connections to pull data from CSI and into the analytics tool are going to already be built and ready to go, so you don't have to do any of the data modeling yourself. So just to give you a touch of some of the capabilities, Burst has interactive dashboards, so you can kind of draw out what you want to see, what metrics you want access to when you check out your dashboard. It also allows report creation that kind of supports those dashboards, where you can drill into the dashboard item and check out the underlying data. It also has built-in data blending and data modeling tools so that your end users can tie in other data sources than just CSI. So it's very common that you're collecting a bunch of data in your ERP system, but you have data silos. Maybe your quality system is offline, or maybe you have a website that you're collecting some information as well as your customer sales. You want to tie that all together into one data set to do your analysis. Those tools are once again built into Burst, so an end user can normalize the data across those multiple sources and show that information in a single view, a single report. So just to take a brief look at some of these capabilities and some screenshots, the Burst dashboards. So once again, you can design the types of graphs you want to use for the data, how you want to look at the data. When I was first doing a little bit of playing around with this, being able to use a map view and have the system automatically create kind of a density map of customers across a region or across states, and then be able to drill down through that. So once again, kind of dashboards being the gateway into the analytics package. Next slide, please. And then those same dashboards can be distributed via mobile devices. So since Burst is a cloud-based solution, you don't have to be tied to your desktop to be able to access the data. You can access it wherever you are and log in and get the data and check it out on your mobile device as you're traveling around. One more slide, please. And then, as I mentioned, the underlying reporting. So yeah, the dashboards are nice to summarize the data and give you a key metric, but there's always the requirement to kind of take that next level look and drill down into the data. And so you can create detailed level reports. And then once again, look at those reports amongst different dimensions. If you have a sales analysis report, one time you look at that report, you might want to see sales by state. The next time you look at that report, you might want to see sales by product. And then those two ideas might get combined into a single report, sales by state, by item, or by category. With one report, you'd be able to do kind of those cross-tab views of the data, once again, within Burst. And then next slide. And then, as I mentioned, that data preparation is pretty important. So typically, it would take a data scientist or somebody who knows your data sets rather well, an IT person, to be able to pull together and tie data together from multiple sources. Within Burst, it really is as simple as drawing arrows between the individual data sets to normalize the data, to say customers from one data set are called clients in another data set. Draw the linkage with a what you see, what you get sort of design tool, and then the system does the work behind the scenes to make the connections, make the joins, so that data becomes normalized for analysis purposes. So once again, I apologize for sort of running quickly through those, but just wanted to kind of give you guys a sneak peek of what's available in Burst once you get to version 10.
Okay, so at this point, thank you, Mick. At this point, you may be asking yourself, well, I gotta have this new version of CSI. So how do I do it? What's my next step? Well, it's pretty easy, actually. We have an upgrade methodology. We set a discovery, and we talk with you about what you're trying to achieve, what your business goals are, what your timeline is, what your team's bandwidth is, kind of where you want the division of effort, and we'll potentially set up a discovery or risk assessment. This will be a joint effort between you and Guide Technology Professional Services, and we'll talk about what we're trying to achieve here. We'll design a solution and create a cutover plan and put a stake in the ground for going live and create a project plan. Almost like we were doing a fresh implementation, but much lesser of a scale. Then we'll go through a build phase and we'll create a test environment. We'll do that migration. We'll make sure it's functioning. We'll look at mods. We'll look at data. We'll make sure everything that we need to know, and so there's no surprises, is there. And then we'll do issue resolution if we need to, retest as we need to, deploy, and support you going live. So again, how do I do it? Well, you're going to reach out to us. You're going to give us a call or send us an email. And who you're going to call or send an email to? Well, if you'd like to send it directly to me, you can. I'm your install-based engagement manager. That's my contact information. Or you can reach out to your account executives, Lori Martz or Randy Park. Here's their contact information. Any one of the three of us would be glad to talk to you about upgrading to CSI version 10, what it's going to take, and how quickly we can get you there. So with that, I thank you very much for attending this webinar. My name's Helmut Cody. I'm with Guide Technologies, and we're looking forward to seeing you on CSI version 10.